Hello incels and femcels, in this video I'm going to be comparing all of the characters in the 5.2 banners, and hopefully I'm going to be helping you choose which one of them you should go for depending on what you have on your account and what you need. Before we continue that though, I just want to say if you want to wish for any of these characters and you want to buy Primo Gems and Genesis Crystals, the best way to do that is going to be throughout Lootbar GG. Lootbar is a game top-up website where you can buy different games currencies including Genshin Impact. It's very safe and secure, and it's also cheaper than the official game stores. For example, if you click the link in the description, you go to Genshin Impact, you can pick an offer. I'm going to pick this offer right here. In the official game store, it's going to cost me around $50. On Lootbar, it's around $40.50. And it can be even less with other coupons and stuff like that. That means I saved almost $10, which is super good. Lootbar, you can always save up to 20% in a lot of good deals. But yeah, just pick the offer, put your user ID and your region, click on top up now, and then you just pay, and then you just wait a couple of minutes and the Genesis Crystals are going to be in your game. Those are some of the latest reviews you have from Lootbar. Click the link in the description and top up now. Alright, so let's go over all of the characters and list their pros and cons for each one of them, and then at the end I'm going to give you the conclusion. So starting off with Lyney. Lyney is just going to be an on-field main DPS, and also he's going to be Pyro. You're just going to be dealing damage with pretty much all of his kit, but mainly his charge attacks and stuff like that. So it's just a charge attack spam, and you're going to be dealing damage, and that's it. For Lyney's pros, I would say he's going to be dealing good amounts of damage, like super good amounts of damage. Honestly, I think he's one of the underrated DPSs in general. You don't really see many people saying he's like a good DPS. And I understand why that is, because it's gonna be kind of hard to like fully achieve his potential. But if we're talking about like his maximized value damage, he can be a top DPS, like top 7 or 5 for sure. So it's definitely not bad at all, and he's not a mid DPS. He's definitely gonna be one of the best DPSs in the game, and he can deal humongous amounts of damage. The second pro about Lyney, and also it's kind of a misconception mainly around him, is that he has kind of flexible teams. His passive is gonna limit him a little bit, but it's not really that important to live up to it, to play him with like only pyros or anything like that. You can play him in a lot of different teams. His main role is just gonna be his kit, and he's gonna be kind of like a selfish main DPS. So you just want really any character, any sub DPS, support, whatever that can just buff him or deal damage outside of the field, and it's gonna work fine. Obviously, some combinations are gonna work better than others, but in general, his kit is just revolved around himself. He doesn't really need any specific teammates. Preferably, obviously, you'd want pyros that can buff him and stuff like that, but in general, it's gonna be playable in a lot of different teams, no problems. Now, moving on to Lyney's cons, I would say his first con is that he's gonna be super hard to play. And I mean it in the sense that you're gonna need to like animation cancel, use charge attacks. His rotations with teams are gonna be kind of clunky a lot of times and stuff like that. So to actually play him and maximize his value is a little bit long. Now, this can be a good thing for a lot of people. I'm not saying it's always like a bad thing, but in general, it's not really a positive thing. He's just hard to maximize. So yeah, that's one thing. The second con about him, which is not as severe, but is kind of expensive to build. That's mainly because of his weapons and talents. If you want to maximize his damage, you definitely need a 5-star weapon because he needs a lot of like good base attack, or at least you're gonna see a big difference between them and 4-star options. And also his talents can be a little hard to like fully maximize because he's gonna use his normal attacks, his bursts and stuff like that, a lot of things. So yeah, it can be a little bit, it's not too expensive to build, but definitely kind of expensive to build. Now moving on to the star of this batch, which is gonna be Chasca. Chasca is gonna be very similar to Lyney in a sense that she's also gonna be an on-field main DPS. She's also gonna be a charge attack main DPS, and she's a Nemo in a sense, but she's mainly gonna be absorbing the elements of the other characters on your team, so her damage is not going to be a Nemo technically, or at least most of it. I'm not going to explain her full kit right now, but moving on to her pros, the first pro is that it's going to be good damage overall. We're going to get to that in a bit, but in most scenarios, in most teams, she's going to be able to deal good amounts of damage, very competitive amounts of damage, even for the top main DPSs, and sometimes like super good amounts of damage, like literally top 3 DPSs, but it depends on the team heavily, which is, it's going to be a point. Second pro is that she's going to be pretty unique. We never saw that before. She's gonna be kind of like an on-field driver, but also main DPS on the same time. And she has a lot of like multiple uses and different ideas you can go with her. So yeah, she's definitely gonna be unique in that sense. And if you're one of those who don't like to play like normal characters, it's gonna be super good for you. And that leads me to her last pro, which is that she's gonna be opening up a lot of teams. She's gonna allow you to play very weird teams. I did a teams video about her before. I didn't go too in depth, but in general, you're gonna see a lot of weird teams with her that are only gonna be possible possible with her. And she's gonna have a huge variety of teams that are gonna be super flexible, and we're probably gonna see many more of those in the future. And possibly some of the best teams in the future are gonna be with her. We never know. But yeah, she's definitely one of those characters that you're just gonna randomly see them pop off when another character gets released, when they're like their best support or their best on-field driver, whatever. So you're definitely gonna need her a lot of times to open up a lot of teams, and she's gonna have a good variety of teams, and that's why I said before, she's gonna be pretty unique. Those are pretty much all of the pros about Chasca. Moving on to her cons. The first con is that her team options are not gonna be as simple. She has a lot of team options, yes, but it's not really like just slapping any teammates and they're gonna work. You need them to be different elements. There are a lot of like different considerations. You can check out the team video to understand that more, but in general, her teams are not gonna be simple. There's a good variety, that's for sure, but it's also not as simple as just slapping any characters. Definitely want to make sure some things are present, or else her damage is just gonna be almost bad. And that leads me to the second con, which is inconsistent damage. As I said before, her damage is gonna depend a lot on which team. She's mainly just like a driver, kind of. She's gonna be dealing decent amounts of damage, but in general, a very good amount of her team damage in general is gonna depend on her team and not on her. It depends on like which type of damage you're gonna be dealing, which build you're gonna be building her in, which reactions you're gonna be doing, which supports that can buff those elements and stuff like that. So the difference between her teams is gonna be super huge. So you definitely just want to keep that in mind. You can check out her, at least her decent teammates right now, and if you don't have many of them or you don't want to play them, then in that case, Chasca is gonna be probably a skip, because on her own is like a pure main DPS, like her kit alone with her multipliers and stuff like that, she's not gonna be as great. Most of her damage is gonna depend on which team you're gonna be playing her in and how you take advantage out of her elemental damage. And now moving on to the third character on this batch, which is going to be Neuvillette. Just like an on-field high drum in DPS, everyone knows Neuvillette. For his pros, he's going to be dealing super good damage, probably like top 3 in the game we have right now. Just super good DPS in general. You're not going to see many like huge numbers, but if we're talking like damage per second, it's going to be one of the highest characters in the game, which is pretty good. He can clear like pretty much anything with ease. And the second point is that it's going to be very easy to play. Probably one of the easiest characters to play in the game. Just literally spin and charge attack and you're good. So you have that huge amounts of damage combined with very easy to play, which makes him one of the most perfect and well-rounded main DPSs you can use. You can just clear anything easily without too much thinking and you're good. For his cons, I cannot really think of many. His only con that's like a real con I can think of is that he's gonna need a shielder at C0 for the interruption resistance, or at least some sort of interruption help, or else it's not gonna work pretty well. At C1 this is gonna be fixed, but that's a con. You're gonna need his constellation, so keep that in mind. That C0 is gonna be kind of clunky. And now finally moving on to the OG, we have Zhongli. That's like his, I don't know, 5th, 4th, or 6th rerun, I'm not really sure, but he had a lot of reruns. Zhongli is just gonna be like a support shielder. He's also Geo, so yeah. For his pros, is really a simple character. He's gonna have a good shield, probably the best shield we have in the game since like 1.1 until right now. He has not been power crept in that sense whatsoever. If you build him for a shield build, your shield is pretty much just gonna be unbreakable, which is pretty good. He's also gonna work pretty well for resistance interruption, and if you have his shield on, you just simply don't need to worry about like game mechanics or anything like that. Just have the shield and then attack, and you don't have to worry about taking damage or getting interrupted or knocked back or nothing. It's just a huge convenience. Second pro about him is that he's gonna have some other extra small perks, like support stuff like resistant tread and stuff like that. If you have him with the tenacity, it can be a little buffer, and he can also provide you this small amount of damage, and also the freeze with his ultimate and stuff like that, which can be pretty good for ground control. Just small like support stuff here and there. But his main point is just gonna be his shield, obviously. For his cons, he doesn't really have many, but he has one obvious big one, is that his always almost gonna be a damage loss in most teams. That means he's mainly there for the convenience, as I said before, just for the shield. But if we're talking damage wise and you learn how to dodge, or you know how to get around his shield and you don't need his shield anymore, his support stuff is not as good, and there always gonna be like one other character that you can put on your team, either a sub DPS that can deal much more damage or a support that can buff your DPS much more. But there are always gonna be better characters than Zhongli to put on your team. The only reason you want him on your team is his shield for the convenience. That's pretty much it. So yeah, if you're more experienced with like playing the game and dodging and stuff like that, he's gonna lose some value a little bit. Alright, so now for the final conclusion, what should you pick? Honestly, personally, I think it's going to be pretty simple for this batch, especially because we have pretty similar characters in general. We got 3 main DPSs and 1 support. If you need a main DPS right now, I would say Neuvillette is probably the better option. As I said before, he's just like everything you need. He's going to be dealing good amounts of damage, like top tier damage, not only good amounts. And yeah, the other 2 might out DPS him in like fast rotations for fast clears and stuff like that, like Lyney, for example. Chasca might have like hidden potential in the future and stuff like that. But in general, his damage is going to be super good still, and you can clear anything with Neuvillette. And then when you add to that the convenience, just much simpler teams, much simpler rotations, much simpler like ways to play him. There's really no point in going for Chasca or Lyney unless you want them specifically. But if we're comparing them like just as main DPSs, it's just almost similar damage, but Neuvillette is just going to be much easier to play, so it's going to be the obvious option you'd want to go for. So yeah, if you need a main DPS, Neuvillette is going to be your go-to option. And then Zhongli is the only support. I would say if you need the convenience of the shield, then yeah, maybe go for him. Personally, I still use him in a lot of my teams right now because I don't really care as much about maximizing the damage, and I just like the convenience, especially if I'm just like fast clearing something, or I don't know, just like autopiloting. I just slap in Zhongli in the team, pop a shield, and just wreck the enemies without needing to worry about them hitting me. So it's definitely going to be a good quality of life option, but if you're really just after damage in general, he's not the support you'd want to go for. You probably need to save for better supports in general. But yeah, tell me guys what you're going for in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.